The little girl slept in the snow holding her brother's shoes, and the cold gnawed at her like a slow, patient animal. Frost clung to her lashes. Each breath left a thin ribbon of ghost white that broke in the wind. Her name was Lily. She dreamed of warmth that never came, of a cracked blue mug of cocoa, of a blanket that didn't scratch, of her brother's hand tugging her forward through a crowd that had since scattered and swallowed him whole. The shoes in her arms were the only proof he hadn't been imagined. A boom of wind rolled down the ruined street and shoved her against a drift. Pain woke her, hot at first, then knife-cold. The blur above her became flakes tumbling like torn paper from a sky that wouldn't stop. She tightened her hold on the shoes, scuffed toes, a frayed lace, wrapped twice and knotted badly, the smell of river mud and smoke. She tried to whisper his name, but her lips had turned to glass. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Leave your country name in the comments below. And if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and community, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. Footsteps. A steady rhythm, not the loose, laughing kind that passed her by in daylight. A soldier stepped through the curtain of snow, tall and lean beneath a frost-bitten hood, boots printing dark ovals in the white. Beside him moved a German shepherd, ears pricked, paws barely sinking, as if the dog had learned to tread on the cold without disturbing it. Sergeant Jacob Flynn scanned the length of the street, then stopped, eyes catching on a fist-sized bundle of silver blanket and those shoes, those two big shoes held like treasure. The dog went first. He did not bark, he did not bare teeth. He lowered his head and breathed a soft fog onto Lily's fingers, an apology for the winter. Jacob crouched, his knees cracking into the drift. The mask of habit, orders, maps, patrol routes fell from his face as he took in the bruised lips and the stubborn way she clung to the shoes. "I'm Jacob," he said, voice roughened by cold and years he never counted. "This is Duke. He's gentle." Lily stared at Duke's eyes, amber lamps in the blue dusk, and the fear in her chest loosened one notch. She didn't release the shoes. She couldn't. Jacob slid a thermal blanket from his pack and draped it over her shoulders. The fabric hissed faintly as it met heat her body fought to keep. He peeled off a glove, and the air bit his knuckles like a warning. He ignored it and touched her cheek. Warmth, fragile as a match head, still lived there. "Where's your family?" he asked, already knowing the answer might be a place and not people. She licked a crack in her lip, and it reddened, beading with stubborn life. "My brother," she rasped. "We ran. He said keep the shoes safe. I fell asleep." Duke nosed the shoes, then pressed his body against Lily's knees, a living wall against the wind. Jacob's throat tightened. He saw another winter, another child, a sister who'd laughed with a missing tooth and given him a dandelion crown before a storm took more than roofs. He swallowed the memory. Men who lived on memory forgot to live at all. He slipped a heat pack into Lily's mitten. "Squeeze this." He poured a cap of water from his canteen and touched it to her mouth. She took a sip, eyes never leaving the dog. "He's warm," she said, surprised at hearing her own voice. Duke thumped his tail once, as if to say, "Of course I am." Jacob scanned the windows, black squares with teeth of broken glass. Snow stuffed the doorways like rags in a wound. The map in his head placed them at the edge of a neighborhood that had emptied overnight, cheap houses clutching to a hillside, above a cut of river. The safe house he'd been told to reach was another half-mile, a church basement, with pews stacked against the walls and a generator that coughed more than it ran. He weighed the risks, the dwindling light, the ache in his knee, the old ghost whispering, "Not again." The decision rose by itself. "We're moving," he said. "Slow and careful." Lily clutched the shoes tighter. "If I sleep, I drop them." "You won't sleep," he said, letting discipline warm his tone. "You'll walk. Duke will watch your feet." Duke looked up at that. an unspoken agreement passing like a spark between dog and man. Jacob wrapped the blanket closer, lifted Lily with a practiced scoop, and felt both the lightness of her and the terrible weight of the choice. She was a bundle of ribs and courage. The shoes knocked softly against his chest as he stood. He adjusted his rifle sling so the metal wouldn't bite her bare wrist. They had taken 6 steps when a memory slammed him so hard his boots stuck. A field hospital. A winter, 4 years ago. A tiny hand, not much bigger than the muzzle of his glove, slipping away while generators died and radio crackle replaced prayers. He had carried that hand into every patrol since, feeling its absence like a missing pocket. The world sharpened to a point. He breathed through it. Duke leaned into his shin and the point dulled. The dog's touch said, "Here. Now." Lily watched the soldier's face as if reading names in stone. "Are you going to take my brother's shoes?" she asked, fiercely small. Jacob shook his head. "We take them together." She seemed to approve of the math in that. They moved. The snow did not stop. The sky thickened the way grief does, without drama, just more of the same. Jacob kept Lily high against his chest and scanned the edges where fear hides, under cars, behind doors, in the steady way a curtain breathes, though no window is open. Duke trotted ahead, stopping sometimes to glance back, as if reminding Jacob of a rhythm he could trust. 2 blocks in, the wind shifted. Somewhere to the south a shutter clapped and didn't clap again. Somewhere to the west, a low engine turned over and died. They dipped under a gutted billboard and crossed a yard where a bicycle lay half buried, one handlebar stubbornly refusing the snow. Lily watched it pass, the way you watch yesterday, float down river. "My brother's name is Aaron," she said, and Jacob heard the way she chose is and not was. "He told me my job was to carry the shoes. His job was to find us food. Jobs are important." "They are," Jacob said. "Mine is to get us someplace warm." For a time the only sound was his breath, her breath, the kiss of ice on cloth, and Duke's steady pause. Then from behind the row of garages another sound, the clean, unmistakable crackle of someone stepping on a crust that should have been avoided. Duke's head snapped to the right. His body hardened into a single line. A low rumble lived at the bottom of his throat, as disciplined as a whispered order. Jacob shifted, placing the bulk of his body between the sound and the child. He went still in the way of men who've learned that stillness is armor. The wind paused too, as if listening. Lily's fingers dug into the blanket. The shoes pressed into his chest with a hollow weight that felt suddenly very loud. The words left his mouth by reflex, a ritual from a world of voices, a fragile bridge thrown across this white silence. Duke's rumble deepened. The sound behind the garages changed character. Footsteps multiplied or resolved into something heavier. Metal kissed metal with the soft, hateful click that means a weapon has become a decision. Lily's breath feathered his collarbone. She lifted her face, eyes wide, pupils blown open like doors. "Jacob," she whispered, testing the name that might keep her alive. "They found us." The shoes slipped in her arms, one lace unraveling from its bad knot. It dangled, a thin black line on a field of white, a fuse of memory burning down. Duke's ears canted forward. Snow caught the light of a failing street lamp and turned the air to glitter. Jacob felt the old winter reach for him and chose the new one instead. He lowered Lily to her feet, put the shoes back into her arms as if crowning her with purpose, and raised his open hand toward Duke. The dog understood. He flowed ahead on silent paws, a shadow with a heartbeat, and disappeared behind the garages. Lily's voice was a candle in the wind. "Don't let them take the shoes." "I won't," Jacob said. And for the first time that night, the promise felt like a thing with bones. From the dark came a single, sharp bark, Duke's signal. Not alarm, not welcome, a warning, and then under it, the slow crunch of new footsteps closing in. Jacob stood still, the snow weighing heavy on his shoulders. The sharp bark Duke had given wasn't just a sound, it was language, a code Jacob had learned to read with his life. It meant not safe, someone ahead, prepare yourself. He adjusted Lily gently on her feet, crouching so his face met hers at eye level. "You stay behind me no matter what happens. Hold on to those shoes, don't let go," he said. His voice carried command but also a fragile thread of comfort. Lily nodded, but her hands shook violently, not just from the cold, but from the shadow of fear inching closer with each crunch of footsteps. The shoes knocked together, the sound too small to be heard in such a vast, dangerous silence. But Jacob heard it, and it felt like a heartbeat. Duke reappeared, his fur dusted with frost, his teeth bared silently, not in attack, but in readiness. His tail stayed low, his body angled forward, every nerve tuned to protect the girl and the soldier. Jacob tightened his grip on his rifle. He didn't raise it yet. Raising it meant war, and war had already taken too much. Instead, he slid his hand over Duke's collar, grounding himself through the solid warmth of the dog. Out of the shadows a figure emerged, a man in ragged clothing, his coat torn, his hands empty but twitching with desperation. His eyes were wide, hollow, starved, the eyes of someone who had been running from winter for too long. "Food," the man croaked, his voice cracked as though it had forgotten how to speak. He took a staggering step forward. "Please, food, or fire, anything." Jacob kept his body between Lily and the stranger. His instincts screamed caution, but he saw the man's lips trembling, his breath shuddering like a dying flame. The war had created as many scavengers as soldiers, men who hadn't chosen violence, but whom hunger had bent into thieves. "I don't want trouble," Jacob said firmly. His tone was calm, commanding, the voice of a man who had negotiated with both allies and enemies. "There's a safe house not far from here. You can find shelter if you keep moving." The man's eyes darted to Lily, to the shoes in her arms. His hunger was more than for food. It was for survival, anything that might mean warmth or value. He took another step. Duke's growl deepened, a low thunder vibrating in his chest. Lily whimpered, pressing her face into the blanket. "Jacob," she whispered. Jacob's finger hovered near the trigger, not on it. "Stop there," he ordered. The man froze, then fell to his knees in the snow. His body shuddered as sobs tore through him. "They took everything," he rasped. "My wife, my boy, I couldn't save them. And now—" His voice broke into a hollow silence. Jacob's heart clenched. The man's grief was a mirror of his own, a reflection of nights he had tried to bury. He looked down at Lily, her tiny arms clutching the shoes like holy relics. He looked back at the man. How many lives could a single act of mercy save? But before Jacob could speak, a sharp whistle pierced the air, high, shrill, cutting through the storm. The man's head jerked, terror snapping across his face. "No," he breathed. "They found me." From the dark beyond the garages, more footsteps surged forward, this time heavier, faster, purposeful. Voices rose, harsh and commanding, not begging. Shapes moved in the snow, at least 3, maybe more. The scavenger's plea had been only a prelude to the real danger. Duke lunged forward a step, bark ripping through the night. Jacob swung his rifle up, his body moving on instinct, honed from too many ambushes. "Run!" the man gasped, his voice breaking. He looked at Lily, then Jacob. "Take her! Run!" Snowflakes spun wildly as the first of the new figures broke into view, weapons glinting under the pale glow of the dying street lamp. Jacob pulled Lily close. Duke crouched, a growl rolling like fire in his chest. The night had turned, and survival was no longer a quiet choice. It was a battle forced upon them. And in Lily's arms the shoes slipped slightly, one lace dangling loose like a candle's last flame. The snow seemed to swallow every sound, yet the chaos ahead grew louder, the clash of boots against frozen ground, the faint rattle of metal as weapons shifted in calloused hands. Jacob Flynn's instincts sharpened like a blade pulled from its sheath. He He pressed Lily tighter against his chest for a brief moment, letting her feel the thunder of his heartbeat, steady but fierce, a rhythm of protection. Then he set her down carefully, crouching so her eyes met his. "Stay low, stay behind me, do not run until I tell you," he whispered. Her lips trembled, but she nodded. She hugged the shoes like they were a shield made of leather and memory. Duke growled low, his body an arrow pointing toward the shadows where figures were breaking through. 3 men, armed, desperate, wrapped in layers of scavenged coats, emerged from the swirling veil of snow. Their eyes locked on Jacob and the child. One raised a makeshift rifle, patched with tape and rust, but his stance screamed hunger more than discipline. "Soldier!" one of them called out, his voice gravel. "Hand the girl over, we don't want you, just her." Jacob's jaw clenched. The words slammed into him like ice, his muscles coiled. He had heard commands like that before, in ruined villages where lives were traded like currency, where innocence was sold for warmth. His trigger finger itched, but he forced his voice to remain steady. "She's under my protection. Step back and walk away." The men laughed, a sound too empty to belong to joy. The leader spat into the snow. "You can't protect her forever. World like this, she'll die anyway. Better in our hands than frozen in yours." Lily buried her face against the shoes. Her whisper was muffled but sharp, cutting through Jacob's chest. "Don't let them take me." Jacob positioned himself squarely in front of her, rifle raised now. "You'll have to go through me first." For a moment, silence stretched. Only the wind dared to move. Then, like a match struck in dry grass, everything ignited. The leader lunged forward, Jacob squeezed. The trigger, one shot, clean, snapping through the storm. The man crumpled into the snow, his weapon clattering beside him. The other 2 shouted, spreading out, one circling toward the garage, the other ducking low. "Duke, left!" Jacob barked. The shepherd launched like lightning, muscles rippling beneath his winter coat. He slammed into the circling man, teeth flashing. The scavenger screamed, flailing as Duke drove him into the snow, a growl vibrating deep enough to freeze the air itself. The 3rd man lifted his weapon toward Lily. Jacob saw it, his stomach turning to fire. He fired again, his bullet tearing through the night. The man fell, his weapon skidding across the ice. And then silence. Breath steamed in the frozen air. Lily's eyes were wide, too wide, reflecting the dying light of the lamp like shards of glass. Duke held the 2nd man pinned, his jaws clamped on the man's sleeve, not flesh, waiting for Jacob's signal. Jacob lowered his rifle slowly. "Duke, release!" The dog obeyed, stepping back, though his growl lingered like thunder rolling away. The scavenger scrambled backward on hands and knees, eyes darting from the soldier to the child. He rose, half running, half falling into the night, vanishing into the curtain of snow. Jacob exhaled, chest burning with the cold and the weight of what had just unfolded. He turned back to Lily, kneeling to meet her tear-glossed eyes. "It's over," he whispered. "You're safe." But the words tasted fragile. Nothing was over in a world like this. Safety was only ever borrowed. Lily reached out, her small hand trembling as it brushed Duke's fur. "He saved me," she said, voice quivering. Jacob nodded. "We all saved each other." For a moment, something warm pierced the frozen night, the bond between soldier, child, and dog, 3 lives stitched together by loyalty. But then, far off, another sound rose, the echo of engines, heavy and grinding. More were coming, not scavengers this time, but organized. Jacob knew the rhythm of machines that hunted. He stood, lifting Lily once more, shoes clutched against her chest, his voice hardened with resolve. "We need to move, now!" Duke barked once, sharp and sure, before trotting ahead, ears high. The snow thickened again, wrapping the world in white. Behind them, the fallen bodies began to vanish beneath the storm. Ahead of them waited the church basement Jacob prayed was still standing. And in Lily's arms the shoes remained, a fragile tether to hope, and perhaps to a miracle that had not yet revealed itself. The wind cut sharper now, as though the storm itself had taken sides against them. Jacob kept Lily close, her tiny body trembling beneath the thermal blanket. The shoes clutched in her arms tapped softly against his chest with each hurried step, like a reminder that the boy she had lost still walked with them in spirit. Duke padded ahead, nose to the ground, then lifted his head into the air, tasting the currents of cold. His ears flicked once, right, then left, and he angled them toward Jacob, giving a silent warning. Danger was still nearby. Jacob trusted that signal more than any compass. The echo of engines rolled faintly behind them. Not close, not yet, but growing. Whoever those men were, they weren't alone. Organized patrols, scavenger gangs, maybe worse. He tightened his grip on Lily. He had promised her safety, but the road between a promise and its fulfillment was always lined with blood. They passed through an alley where icicles hung like knives from sagging gutters. Windows gaped open, teeth of glass glittering faintly with the snow's reflection. Lily's eyes darted toward the shadows. "Are there more men?" she whispered, her voice as fragile as a paper prayer. "Maybe," Jacob admitted. He had never lied to civilians, not even children. Lies cost lives. "But Duke and I are here. You hold on to those shoes. That's your mission." Her little jaw tightened. She nodded, pressing the shoes even closer. "Then I'll do it." Jacob almost smiled despite the bitter cold. "She's braver than most soldiers I've served with." The church appeared at last, hunched against the storm like a weary sentinel. Its steeple leaned slightly, cracked by years of neglect, but the stone walls still stood. A dim flicker of light seeped from a basement window. Generator or candle, he couldn't tell. Relief spread through Jacob's chest like warmth from a fire. Shelter meant survival, at least for tonight. Duke bounded ahead, circling the perimeter, his paws leaving quick prints that filled instantly with snow. He gave a sharp bark, the signal for all clear, for now. Jacob pushed the heavy door open with his shoulder. The hinges groaned, echoing through the hollow nave. Inside, pews were stacked against the wall, a barricade half-heartedly maintained. The air carried the faint smell of burnt wood and candle wax. He lowered Lily onto a makeshift cot in the corner. She clutched the shoes tightly even in rest, eyes glassy with exhaustion. Duke settled at her side, his warm body pressing against hers, a guardian that even sleep could not dismiss. Jacob crouched, brushing frost from his beard. He studied the child, the way her breath quivered, the faint blue beneath her nails. He knew hypothermia well. She needed steady warmth, food, and sleep. He pulled another heat pack from his kit, cracking it to life, then slid it gently into her blanket. Her eyes fluttered open. "Thank you," she whispered, the words small but deliberate. Jacob's throat tightened. "Rest, Lily, I'll keep watch." Hours passed. The storm outside clawed at the church like a beast demanding entry. Jacob sat by the door, rifle across his knees. Every creak of the building made his heart strike harder. Duke remained awake too, ears twitching at each sound, his head occasionally resting against Lily, as though reassuring her that even in dreams she wasn't alone. Jacob's thoughts wandered against his will, back to his sister, back to that winter years ago. He remembered the hospital tent, the sudden silence when the generator failed, the hand slipping from his own. He had sworn then never to feel so helpless again. And yet here he was, another child, another winter, another fragile thread between life and death. He clenched his jaw, shaking the memory away. Healing, he knew, was not forgetting. Healing was carrying the weight and still walking forward. A sound shattered the quiet, a metallic clang, faint but deliberate. Jacob's eyes snapped open. He raised his hand silently. Duke stood immediately, fur bristling, body low to the ground. Another sound, footsteps on stone outside, not the careless shuffle of scavengers, heavy, coordinated soldiers. Jacob's breath hardened. He moved quickly, pulling Lily into his arms. She stirred, blinking. "What's happening?" "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." The door handle rattled. Jacob's finger brushed the trigger. Duke's growl deepened, but controlled. He was waiting for the command. A voice outside barked orders, muffled by the door. Then 3 heavy knocks, not random, a signal. Jacob froze. That rhythm, short, short, long, he knew it. It was a recognition code, one used by units that had once fought alongside him. His chest tightened with both hope and dread. If it was truly allies, salvation might have arrived. If it was enemies mimicking the code, doom stood outside. He looked at Lily. She clutched her brother's shoes, her eyes wide, but unblinking, waiting to see if miracles still lived in this broken world. Jacob inhaled, steadying his hand, and gave Duke a glance. The shepherd shifted, ready to spring. Then Jacob stepped toward the door. The knock still echoed in the hollowness of the church. Short, short, long. Jacob stood with his rifle raised, eyes locked on the door, mind running faster than the storm outside. The code was one he knew, yes, but in war, familiarity could be a trap. Enemies learned patterns, mimicked them, lured men to open doors they shouldn't. Duke growled softly, pressing forward, muscles coiled like a bowstring. Lily clutched the shoes tighter against her chest, her breath short and quick. Jacob called out, his voice firm but low, the way soldiers speak when danger is a breath away. "Identify yourself." For a moment, only the storm answered. Then a muffled reply came through the door. "Sergeant Daniel Cross, 3rd Division, Winter Route Patrol. Code word, lantern." Jacob's grip tightened. The name and division struck something in his memory. Cross had been a comrade years back before their unit fractured. Lantern was indeed the countersign. But the world had twisted too many truths. A man could be wearing his friend's coat, carrying his friend's name. He turned to Lily. "Stay behind me. Don't move." The handle turned again, this time with less force, more patience. Jacob stepped forward, Duke right beside him, and slowly drew the door open. Snow howled in with the gust, blinding for a second. 3 figures stood outside, wrapped in tattered military coats. The man in front pulled his hood back, revealing a face Jacob half recognized, hollowed by hunger, aged by cold, but unmistakably Daniel Cross. "Jacob Flynn," Cross breathed, surprise cutting through his exhaustion. "I'll be damned! You're alive!" Jacob didn't lower the rifle right away. His eyes flicked to the others, armed, weary, but not threatening. Duke eased his growl, sensing Jacob's tension loosen. Cross gave a bitter smile. "Still don't trust easy. Can't blame you. But you don't have to fight alone. Not tonight." Lily peeked from behind Jacob's leg. Cross noticed, his eyes softening. "And who's this?" Jacob stepped slightly aside, keeping one hand on his rifle. "Lily, I found her in the snow. She's all that's left of her family." Cross's jaw tightened. He didn't ask more. He knew better than to pull at wounds. Instead, he gestured to the men with him. "We've got supplies, what little's left, heat packs, a bit of food, enough to share." For the first time in days, Jacob let himself lower his weapon. Only slightly. "Then come in, but know this, if you try to harm her, you won't walk back out." Cross gave a nod, as if he expected nothing less. Fair enough. Inside the church, the cold walls absorbed new life. Cross unpacked a battered satchel producing tins of beans, hard bread, and 3 precious candles. The men lit them, shadows dancing over the ruined pews. The flicker brought a strange calm, a reminder that fire still lived in the world. Lily sat wrapped in her blanket, the shoes balanced on her knees. Jacob crouched beside her as she nibbled at the bread Cross had offered. Her eyes seemed wider now, less from fear, more from the shock of being fed. "Thank you," she whispered, glancing from Jacob to the new men, unsure whom to credit. Jacob touched her shoulder. "Eat. Strength will keep you alive." Cross watched, then leaned closer to Jacob. "You always had a way with the kids," he said quietly. "Never thought I'd see you carrying one through this storm." Jacob's gaze hardened. "I won't let another die in my arms." Cross nodded slowly. "Then maybe this time we make it together." Hours crept by. The men rotated watch at the door, rifles at the ready. The storm outside grew worse, rattling the stained glass shards still clinging to the church windows. Lily curled against Duke's warm body, finally surrendering to sleep. Jacob sat near her, his rifle across his knees, but his eyes kept drifting to the shoes she clutched. They were old, battered, the leather splitting at the seams, yet they carried weight, more than mere soles and stitching. They carried her brother's memory, her faith, her reason to endure. Cross noticed too. "Those shoes mean something to her," he murmured. "They're her miracle," Jacob replied. Cross frowned. "You think miracles still exist, after everything we've seen?" Jacob's eyes lingered on Lily. "Maybe miracles aren't about stopping the pain. Maybe they're about surviving it, together." Near dawn, the storm began to break. Pale light seeped into the church, turning the frost on the windows into diamonds. For a moment, the world seemed almost beautiful. Lily stirred, lifting her head. She blinked at the light, then whispered, "It looks like heaven." Jacob brushed a strand of hair from her face. "No, Lily, that's the world, still fighting to shine." But before hope could settle, the sound of engines roared again, closer this time. Trucks, armored, moving through the snow like predators. Duke shot to his feet, barking once, sharp and urgent. Cross cursed under his breath. "They tracked us." Jacob stood, lifting Lily into his arms once more, her shoes pressed into his chest, cold but steady. His voice carried the weight of command, the echo of a soldier who had led men through worse. "We move, now, together." Duke bounded toward the door. The others gathered their weapons. And as Jacob stepped into the snow, child in his arms, dog at his side, old friend at his back, he felt something stir inside him. Not just survival, not just duty, but the spark of salvation. Because sometimes a miracle wasn't thunder from the skies. Sometimes it was a soldier, a dog, and a child with shoes too big for her feet, walking forward into the storm. The storm had calmed, but danger pressed closer with every breath. The guttural growl of engines echoed through the streets, bouncing off broken walls, growing louder. Jacob Flynn adjusted Lily in his arms, her head tucked beneath his chin, her brother's shoes pressed between them like a sacred relic. Duke trotted ahead, hackles bristling, ears locked forward. Daniel Cross gritted his teeth, checking the magazine of his rifle. "They've got wheels and numbers. Out here, that's death." Jacob's eyes scanned the churchyard, searching the snow for salvation. The world was painted white, but he saw what others might have missed. A narrow passage behind the church, half hidden by collapsed stone and drifting snow. It led toward the river cut, a dangerous escape, but better than being pinned in the open. He turned sharply to Cross. "We don't fight them head-on. We move, fast and quiet, back way, toward the river." Cross frowned. "The river's half frozen. You'll risk drowning." Jacob adjusted his grip on Lily, whose small hands clung desperately to the shoes. Better to risk water than certain death. Cross stared at him for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Lead the way." The group slipped from the church's rear, moving through the broken knee, stone archway. Snow swallowed their footsteps, but the engines drew closer, headlights slicing through the storm in sweeping arcs. "Down!" Jacob hissed, and they all pressed against the cold wall of a ruined shed. 2 trucks rolled past the churchyard, armored plates welded on their flanks, men with rifles riding in the beds. Their laughter was harsh, joyless. Lily trembled, burying her face against Jacob's coat. Duke pressed against her legs, steadying her with his warmth. Cross whispered, "Scavenger militia. They've been hunting anyone left with supplies. They'll tear that church apart." Jacob's jaw clenched. "Then we'll be ghosts before they know it." The path to the river was treacherous. Snow drifts rose like dunes, hiding jagged wire and broken fences. Twice, Duke stopped, ears twitching, sniffing the air. Once, they froze as a patrol of 2 men wandered close, cigarettes glowing red against the night. Lily's small body quivered against Jacob, but she didn't cry out. She held the shoes tighter, as if they lent her courage. Jacob felt the weight of her silence. It was the silence of children forced to grow too fast. When the men passed, Duke led them on, his paws finding the safest path. At last, the river revealed itself, a black ribbon cutting through the snow, its surface rimmed with ice. Chunks drifted slowly downstream, groaning as they collided. The current was strong, unforgiving. Cross shook his head. We can't cross this with a child. Jacob studied the water, the broken bridge downstream, the frozen shallows upstream. He saw danger everywhere, but he also saw no choice. The trucks were closing in, their engines echoing across the hills. "We don't cross the deep," Jacob said. "We follow the edge. The ice will hide our trail. They'll think we tried to cross and drowned." Cross looked doubtful, but didn't argue. Survival often meant following the one man who still believed it was possible. They moved along the riverbank, feet crunching softly on the half-frozen edge. The ice groaned but held. Duke trotted just ahead, ears swiveling, nose close to the ground. Lily stirred, lifting her head. Her lips were pale, but her eyes locked on Jacob's. "Will my brother find us here?" she asked quietly. Jacob swallowed, throat tightening. "He'll find you wherever you are. That's what family does." She nodded, clutching the shoes tighter. A fragile smile touched her lips, and for the first time, Jacob felt that maybe his words weren't just for her. Maybe they were for himself. Behind them, the truck stopped at the church. Voices rose, orders barked, doors slammed, then gunfire, short, sharp bursts. They were tearing the place apart. Cross muttered, "If we'd stayed." "We'd be dead," Jacob cut him off. Suddenly Duke froze, body rigid. His growl rumbled low, eyes locked on the tree line ahead. Jacob followed his gaze. Shapes emerged, 5 men, armed, blocking the river path. Their coats bore no insignia, just the ragged mark of survivors turned predators. The leader raised his weapon. "End of the road, soldier, hand over the supplies and the girl." Lily whimpered, burying her face against the shoes. Duke snarled, stepping forward, body trembling with readiness. Jacob's pulse thundered, but his voice came out steady, iron wrapped in calm. "You'll have to go through me." Cross lifted his rifle, the 2 men behind him doing the same. For a heartbeat, the world froze, the river groaning, the snow swirling. Duke crouched to spring. The leader sneered, finger tightening on the trigger. And then, from far off, a sound split the air, one not of engines or rifles. Church bells. Soft at first, then louder, tolling across the valley. The ancient bell tower, cracked and forgotten, had found its voice in the storm. The scavengers faltered, eyes darting toward the sound. Even Jacob froze for a heartbeat. Bells meant people, bells meant faith, bells meant hope. Lily's eyes widened. "It's a miracle," she whispered. Jacob didn't hesitate. "Move!" he barked. As the bells rang, drowning out gunfire and fear, Jacob pushed forward, child in arms, dog at his side, friends at his back, rushing toward the sound that promised more than survival. It promised salvation. The bells rang with a stubborn rhythm, as though each toll was a heartbeat echoing across the frozen valley. Jacob's boots pounded against the snow as he pushed Lily tighter against his chest. The scavengers hesitated in the path, their leader cursing, his weapon still raised, but his eyes flicking toward the distant bell tower. "Fall back!" one of them hissed. "That sound means people. Could be soldiers." The leader spat, torn between greed and fear. For one tense breath, Jacob thought he'd fire anyway, but the bells tolled again, louder, rolling like thunder through the storm. The men cursed, retreating into the tree line, their shadows swallowed by the snow. Jacob didn't look back. He pushed onward along the river's edge, following the bell's call like a compass. Cross and his 2 men flanked behind, rifles ready, scanning every corner of darkness. Duke ran ahead, his paws scattering snow, ears locked forward as if the sound itself guided him. They climbed a slope slick with ice, Lily clinging tightly to the shoes and whispering faintly with each toll. "It's a miracle. It's a miracle." Jacob glanced at her. Her lips were cracked, her skin pale, but her eyes, those eyes glowed with something fierce, something that hadn't existed in him for years. Faith. The bells grew clearer as they crested the hill. Through the snow, the silhouette of the bell tower appeared, crooked, scarred by time, but upright. A faint orange glow spilled from its base. Torches, fire, people. Cross let out a low breath. Could be friend, could be trap. Jacob adjusted his grip on Lily. "Doesn't matter. We don't survive another night out here." As they drew closer, shapes emerged from the tower's base, figures wrapped in patched coats, armed, but their weapons were not raised. Instead, one man stepped forward, a lantern in his hand, its flame steady despite the wind. "Identify yourselves," the man called. His voice was strong, not cruel, carrying authority but not malice. Jacob shifted Lily to one arm, raising his free hand in open display. "Sergeant Jacob Flynn, former 3rd Division, we're seeking shelter for a child." The man studied him, then lowered the lantern slightly. "A soldier with a child in his arm? And a dog at his side. That's a sight I never thought I'd see again." Duke gave a short bark, not hostile, measured, assessing. The man nodded. "Bring them in, but slowly." Inside the tower, warmth hit them like a wave. A fire roared in the hearth, filling the air with the scent of burning pine. Around it sat a cluster of survivors, men, women, even a few children, their faces gaunt but alive. Lily stirred, lifting her head. She blinked at the fire, at the faces, and for the first time since Jacob had found her, her lips curved into the shadow of a smile. The leader of the group introduced himself as Father Elias, a priest who had refused to abandon the tower when the world collapsed. His voice carried both weariness and an unshaken core of belief. "You've come through the storm," he said. "That makes you family now. Sit. Warm yourselves." Jacob hesitated, then lowered Lily onto a blanket by the fire. She immediately curled up, shoes pressed to her chest, eyes closing with a sigh. Duke lay beside her, resting his head on her legs. Cross leaned against the wall, watching the priest. "You rang the bells to draw us here?" Elias nodded. "We ring them whenever the storm grows loud. Some say it's madness calling attention, but I say it's a beacon for the lost." Later, as food was shared, a thin stew but hot, Jacob found himself sitting near Elias. The priest studied him carefully. "You carry more than a rifle, soldier. You carry ghosts." Jacob stared into the fire. "Too many." "Then maybe this is your second chance," Elias said quietly. "The girl, Lily, you called her? She still believes in miracles. Perhaps you should too." Jacob's jaw tightened. "Miracles don't bring back the dead." "No," Elias agreed, "but they can keep the living alive, and sometimes that's enough." The night deepened, the storm easing outside. Survivors huddled close, finding warmth in proximity. Lily stirred once, whispering her brother's name, but Duke nuzzled her, calming her back into sleep. Jacob sat awake, rifle across his knees, though the fire tempted him with drowsiness. His eyes kept drifting to Lily, her fragile body curled around those battered shoes. Something about her, her silence, her faith, her fierce grip on what little she had left, cut deeper than any war memory. Cross approached, sitting beside him. "You thinking of your sister?" Jacob didn't answer at first. Then he nodded. "I failed her, but I won't fail this one." Cross clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Then you won't." Just before dawn, the bells tolled again, this time softer, deliberate, not desperate. A call, not a warning. Jacob rose, rifle ready, Duke instantly alert. Elias stood by the rope, his face calm. "It is our ritual," he said. "At first light, we ring for those we lost, and for those still fighting to be found. Jacob looked at Lily, still asleep, shoes held tight. He thought of her brother somewhere out there, or perhaps nowhere at all. He thought of his sister, of every child lost to storms and silence. And for the first time in years, Jacob bowed his head. The bells tolled, and their sound did not feel like war. It felt like healing. The dawn light crept through the broken glass of the bell tower, painting faint colors across the stone floor. For one fragile moment, there was peace. Survivors whispered, stirring slowly from sleep, their breaths curling in the cold air. Lily still slept near the fire, her brother's shoes clutched tightly to her chest, Duke curled protectively at her side. Jacob Flynn stood at the window slit, rifle cradled in his arms. The calm was a lie, he knew. A silence like this meant only one thing: danger, waiting. His instincts had kept him alive too many years to ignore them now. Cross came up beside him. "You haven't slept," Jacob shook his head. "Can't. Not with her here." His eyes flicked to Lily. "Not with them out there." As if summoned by the thought, the distant roar of engines broke the morning stillness. Jacob's stomach tightened. He raised the rifle and peered through the frost-coated slit. Down the slope, dark shapes moved, trucks, men, weapons glinting. The scavenger militia had followed the trail after all. "They're here," Jacob said flatly. Cross cursed under his breath, rallying the others. The survivors stiffened, some clutching old hunting rifles, others holding nothing but fear. Father Elias stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "We've defended this tower before," he said, "but not against so many." Jacob turned, his voice sharp, commanding. "Then we don't wait for them to surround us. We fight smart, bottleneck them at the stairs, use the walls for cover. They want the girl, they'll come hard, but they won't take her." Lily stirred at his words, blinking awake. She clutched the shoes tighter, confusion in her sleepy eyes. "Jacob." He knelt beside her, brushing frost from her hair. "Stay with Duke. No matter what happens, you hold those shoes. That's your job. Understand?" She nodded, trembling but fierce. "I won't let go." Duke pressed his nose to her cheek, then turned, ready, as if he too understood. The first shots cracked outside, sharp against the morning air. Bullets struck the stone walls, sparking chips of rock. Survivors screamed, ducking low. Jacob barked orders, moving with calm precision. Cross and two others took the windows. Jacob and Duke positioned themselves at the base of the stairs, where the militia would breach first. The militia shouted, boots crunching, engines revving as they dismounted. A voice roared up the hill. "Give us the girl, and we'll spare the rest." Jacob's voice cut through the air like steel. "You'll have to climb over my body." Gunfire erupted. Bullets shattered the lower windows. Jacob fired back, clean and measured, each shot finding its mark. Duke lunged at the first man to push through the door, dragging him down with a snarl that shook the tower. Cross shouted from above, "They're circling, more coming from the west." Jacob reloaded, breath steady despite the chaos. He thought of his sister, of that winter long ago when he couldn't save her. Not this time, not this child. The fight raged for what felt like hours. Smoke stung the air, the bells above trembling with each shot. Survivors fought with desperation, defending not just a tower, but the fragile thread of hope it represented. Lily crouched near the fire, Duke darting back to shield her whenever the enemy pressed too close. Her small voice whispered over and over, almost a prayer, "Please let us live. Please let us live." And then the militia brought out fire. A bottle, flame licking its mouth, hurled through the window. It shattered, flames racing across the wooden pew barricade. The survivors screamed as smoke filled the air. Jacob coughed, dragging the barricade back, smothering flames with his coat. But the fire spread too quickly. The tower itself became a trap. Cross's voice cracked. "We can't hold them much longer." Jacob's eyes darted to Lily, clutching those shoes, her face pale in the smoke. In that moment, he knew. Salvation wasn't in victory, it was in sacrifice. He grabbed Cross's arm. "Take her. Take Lily and the others through the back. There's an escape tunnel below the bell floor. I saw it when we came in." Cross shook his head. Not without you. You don't get it, Jacob growled. They want me dead and her alive. If I stay, I buy you time, Duke barked, as if protesting. Lily's eyes widened with terror. No, Jacob. He knelt before her, forcing himself to be steady. He placed his hand over hers, pressing the shoes tighter against her chest. Your brother gave you these because he believed you'd survive. I believe it too. Don't let that faith die. Her tears spilled, but she nodded, understanding far beyond her years. Jacob stood, rifle in hand, back straight. He turned to Cross. Go, now! The survivors fled through the hidden tunnel, Cross carrying Lily, Father Elias guiding the others. Duke lingered, refusing to leave. Jacob looked down at him. Go with her, boy. Protect her. Duke whined, but when Jacob pointed, his loyalty shifted to Lily. He bounded into the tunnel, the sound of his paws fading into the earth. Jacob turned back toward the stairs. The militia surged again, firelight glinting off their weapons. Jacob raised his rifle. His last stand had come. He thought of Lily's smile, of Duke's steady gaze, of the bells that had called them here. And for the first time in years, he felt peace. Healing wasn't forgetting. It was giving others the chance to live. The rifle cracked again and again until smoke and fire swallowed the tower. Hours later, on the far side of the river, Lily stumbled into the snow, shoes still clutched to her chest. Cross held her steady, Duke pressing against her side. Behind them, the bell tower burned, its bells tolling one last time as the flames consumed it. Lily turned, tears streaking her smoke-stained face. He saved us. Cross knelt, placing a hand on her shoulder. He gave us more than that. He gave us tomorrow. The bells rang once more before the tower collapsed, their sound carrying across the valley like a final prayer. Lily held up her brother's shoes, her voice, small but fierce, rose against the silence. I'll keep them safe, I promise. And with that promise, the miracle was complete, not a miracle of fire or thunder, but of sacrifice, loyalty, and love stronger than death.